Tough act to follow, and congratulations again, Tim, to you and to your organization for a tremendous job. But we also have an individual ahead of us here tonight as our guest speaker who also has achieved a number of those high goals and objectives, and I'm certainly talking about our guest tonight, Keith Cooley. Now, I hope I don't take more than 20 or 30 minutes for this. But since Tom mentioned high school, I did hear on the news, on the radio, a teacher, Mr. Hayner, at Pontiac Central. And here again, we select people from our past, from our high school, college, wherever it might be, or a church. Those people that help to guide us along, give us some help, give us a little bit of encouragement, build up our confidence, and at the same time steer us in the right direction. I'm sure many of you have all of those mentors as well as Keith and perhaps also as myself. But I think as I look at Keith Cooley's background, and it's quite impressive. As you know, that currently he's the president and CEO of Next Energy, one of the nation's leading accelerators of alternative and renewable energy. And he and his team facilitate strategic consortia for applied research, connect ventures and emerging technologies to strategic partners. This individual has an excellent background for the role that he has today. He's a leader. He's a leader among leaders. And if this wasn't enough, prior to coming to Next Energy, he was selected as the director of the Department of Labor and Economic Growth and a cabinet member to the governor of the state of Michigan. And in that capacity, he managed a $1.4 billion budget and directed the activities of more than 4,000 employees. Now, many of you may know Keith perhaps better for his role for a number of years with Focus Hope. And when I was at Siemens Automotive, I think this is where we first crossed our paths. And when you look at Keith, and when you get to know Keith, you talk about integrity, credibility, the personality, what makes up that individual, trust, and that leadership capability. And when he sees you, it's not a handshake. That's not enough. You get a big hug from Keith. And I think when you look at this kind of an individual who now needs to lead this new organization and build up the support and build up the rapport from the internal organization, there's probably no one better that can do that than Keith Cooley. And so we're honored tonight to have Keith here as our guest. And also among the evening's participants here this evening, we also have a member of the media who thought it was worthy enough to come here on a MSED dinner meeting to also hear those kind of comments from Keith Cooley. But when Tom mentioned teams and the team members that make it happen, we also have a team amongst MSED, and that's called the Programs Committee. There happens to be a co-chairman and a co-chairman, but in the end we all work together, and especially I'd like to give a thanks to Stuart Popp, who pulled the strings together and basically closed the deal to get Keith here this evening with us. So, I think with that, Keith, he's indicated to us that what he would prefer to do in the way of a format is do away with no PowerPoint presentations, but talk to you about what he's doing, identify some of the challenges, and open it up for more of a dialogue than in essence to a presentation. And he's not here necessarily to talk to us, but he's going to talk with us. So with that, Keith.
Thank you so much, sir. Tom, I thought you were talking from my stuff here. Be a typewriter, invent yourself, etc. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here to spend some time with me tonight. My comments probably 10 minutes or so, but I really would like to engage in a conversation around Michigan, especially the Detroit regional area, and some of the things that we'll be seeing coming forward in the next few years around the green tech, alternative energy scene. But first a story. A friend I know friend was spending some time in bars, maybe a little too much. One Friday night, he'd been doing pretty good on the beers, got himself well plastered. Time the bar closes, he's headed home. His friend said to him, you know, you don't look like you're in shape to drive. Let me drive. Let me drive. He said, no, I just live a mile away. I'll be okay. So he goes and gets in his car, and he doesn't get more than about 3 blocks. When the police pull him over, ask him to get out of the car, show his license, and that kind of thing. They got him up with his, you know, his hand on his nose and having him walk the line when the radio in the police car blares out that there's a burglary taking place 3 blocks over. So the 2 police officers tell our hero, our friend, you stay right here, we'll be right back. And they go tearing off to make sure they take care of this burglary. Well, the guy waits and he waits and he waits, and the police don't come for him. So he just drives home. So he gets home and he tells his wife, look, I'm going to bed, I'm not feeling really good. If anybody asks, I've been at home all day with a cold. Okay? Okay. 15 minutes later, they got his license, you know, I mean, they pulled, you know. Mr. So-and-so here, I won't tell you his name, was Neil DeCote.
Thanks.
My wife says, yeah. Says, well, may we see him? And she says, well, he's under the weather, he's in bed, he's been in bed all day. Can we see his car? Would you open the garage? She said, why would you want me to do that? Please, just open the garage. Okay. So she goes and opens the garage door. Sure enough, right there in the garage is the police car. Doesn't have anything to do with my talk, I just like to know. Actually, I'll bring you back to that, okay? So keep that in mind as we go through the little bit of material. 50 years ago, the U.S. military began developing a communications network that was called the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. Some of us remember it as ARPANET. That's what it was called for short. It was the world's first operational packet switching network. That's a big, long name, but basically that's what became the internet that we know today. Although the ARPANET architects faced tough technical challenges in developing a functional communication system, the concept underlying the whole endeavor was simple. A computer should be able to share information with other computers, not just itself. In 1971, ARPANET engineers set the first email in history, and in 1973, they made the first electronic file transfer, something we do today without even thinking about it. Because today the ability to share almost any kind of information with almost anyone in the world, sometimes even things that we don't want to get, has transformed our society, mostly for the better. Mostly for the better. The internet revolution was about distributed computing. The ongoing transition today to a smarter, more flexible electrical grid is largely about distributed power generation. A linked network of many small generating assets as opposed to just a few coal-fired plants or nuclear plants powering an entire grid. Done right, the transition to a smart grid, and when we say smart, you've probably heard that term, I'm going to tell you, for me, a smart grid simply means an intelligent monitoring system that can track all electricity flowing in the system, one that can turn selected home appliances, for example, on, such as a washing machine or a factory process when power is at least expensive, and at peak times turn those things off to reduce demand. A smart grid like that can complement the transition that we will see in Michigan and across the United States, but especially in Michigan, from the internal combustion engine to electrical vehicles, making our infrastructure